Hello there and welcome back to the studio. Today we have an 8 by 10 inch cotton canvas that has been pre-toned with a thin coat of raw umber. I am using water mixable oil paint, though I like to think of it now these days as water cleanable oil paint. So the tone was applied maybe 20 or 30 minutes ago, and I've been experimenting with this tone. I won't talk too much about it before getting into the actual painting, but it has been thinned out with water on a separate palette, of course, and then toned it just like you would with odorless mineral spirits and with traditional oil paints. So I found that this actually works quite nicely if you tone it 20 or 30 minutes before, so it's still kind of settling in. But it allows some versatility in the paint application. So for the palette here, we have titanium white, flake white, raw umber, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, cadmium red, yellow ochre, sap green, and ivory black. And here's an image of the painting that we will develop in today's episode. It is a Anthony van Dyck master study. And so here is an image of the original Anthony van Dyck oil painting with the name of the painting. Just know that I will not be linking the painting, though I did take it from the Google Arts and Culture website. Okay, so if you just look it up in the Google Arts and Culture website, you should be able to find that picture quite easily. So now with the painting that you're seeing in the corner of the screen there, it's important to note, I believe that this is a study that Anthony van Dyck must have done, but in my search of paintings to create these master studies of, I came across this one, and I was immediately kind of, flabbergasted by the technique. So right now I'm just using a little bit of raw umber with my drawing medium, which I'm keeping on the bottom. It's in this little, this little container. So that medium is, let's see if you can see here. Okay, it's the artisan thinner that I have in another separate container. So now I'm going to turn off the autofocus so that it doesn't continually try to adjust the focus. In any case, so we're going to start off by indicating just the top of the head. And I'm going to be thinning out the paint for the drawing primarily, and then when we get into color, I won't be thinning out anymore. So that's why I consider this my drawing medium. So now, about the Van Dyck painting, so about this painting, I really enjoy the draftsmanship or draftspersonship, however you want to think of it, of this painting. So the most important thing I think right now is just establishing where the head is going to fit in this canvas. So I guess, the bottom of the chin, give or take, will fit somewhere around here. Okay, so now here's the corner of the head. Now this is much more of a drawing exercise, and in particular I think this is a really good way to work on your umber sketch, or whatever color you like to use to draw initially with oil paint. So this is mostly going to be an exercise in your ability to create under sketches or umber sketches. Usually I use burnt umber, but these days I'm just using raw umber. It doesn't really matter. You can use burnt umber, raw umber. If you want to get fancy, you could even use Van Dyck brown. How cool would it be to have a name? How cool would it be to have a color named after you? So here's the bottom of the chin. So I am moving a little bit more slowly with the start for this one. So if you're drawing or painting along with me, this is definitely one where you want to take your time with your initial marks. If you put too many marks right away, it will be kind of unsettling, I think, because the look of this painting or this study, however you want to think of it, is more along the lines of a charcoal drawing, and it's a really good stepping stone into more developed paintings. But let me talk less and paint more. So let's look at the back side over here. So this little head dress is gonna go over here, up here. Okay, so what I'm looking for is basic shape, the overall dynamic movement of the pose, so essentially the gesture of the pose. So we're looking down. So here's an axis indicated very, very lightly, okay? So we're looking down at this model. So you can also consider this a children's portrait. Children are quite difficult to draw, and they're not at the same time. So now another thing, I'll clarify what I just said before, after I say what I want to say now. So after toning this, you want to use a dry brush, a dry bristle brush, and you can use it as your eraser. And part of the reason why this works, I guess most of the time, is because, see how it erases here quite nicely, is because this isn't completely dry yet. And so it allows you the versatility to be able to move the paint around. But anyway, what was I saying? Okay, so children's portraits, they're difficult and then they're not at the same time. So they're not terribly difficult because I think, I don't know, this is just my opinion, I think we tend to look very similar as babies. We haven't fully grown into our faces yet, obviously. So there's a lot more room for generality, so you can generalize a little bit more with the drawing or painting of a baby. Unless, of course, you're very, very dead set on getting an exact likeness of the model. Then, of course, it can be difficult. And that's what makes it difficult. So it's difficult and not terribly difficult at the same time. So, for instance, the exact, puffiness of the model's cheeks here could vary from, infant to infant, but in the most part, you really kind of want to exaggerate this puffy quality to the the zygomatic, the cheekbone. You don't want to underdo this little angle here, and I think that's most likely why Van Dyck emphasized this curve, this main curve, so much. It's because he probably didn't want to make the child look, any older than the child is. Of course, the child is an infant in this case. So yeah, if you're struggling with portraits of children, or you're working on a commission of a children's portrait, definitely take a look at this one, okay, to Van Dyck. Okay, so now there's a little angle going this way. And notice that a great deal of time is spent on the peripheral, just like the outside contour. So you can work your shapes outside in, then from inside out. Let's put the little indication of the clothing. I'm going to use a little bit more of my drawing medium. And this is, again, a very classical way. So here's evidence of the ear back here. So this is a very classical way to compose an oil painting. You can take it from, the stage where Van Dyck left it and push it even further if you really wanted to. But I think this is a very useful, relic that Van Dyck left for us. Okay, so there we have a corner of the eye socket. You really want to look at this main angle, but we kind of already indicated it previously with that axis mark. So now we're transitioning from the big gestural stage of this painting to now we're moving into the block-in stage. So in the block-in stage, of course, like I say all the time, you want to keep your shapes simple and easy so that when the time comes to make any changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. And you want to use straight lines and angles, even when you're drawing or painting an infant. And stand back as often as possible. So I'm sitting back. So every time I stand back or sit back, if you're drawing or painting along with me, take it as an open invitation to draw or stand back with me too. So after standing back, I see that I can probably move this up a little bit, and at the same time we're putting in that shadow. Now remember, this is a master study, not a master copy. So this is a learning exercise with the painting as an end result. That is, I don't want to make a perfect copy of this picture. And if that was my goal, as you know, I usually say if that was my purpose, to make a perfect photographic rendition of this, then I just take a photograph of it and print it and be done. But that's not what I'm after. So now we're beginning to look at the main triangle. So the main triangle, again, is just 2 points here, 2 eyes, the nose. So now this brush is starting to get a little too much of the paint, so now I'm switching to another clean and dry bristle brush. Of course, the eraser brush doesn't work perfectly. But it's enough to push the shape around a little bit. And with your umber sketch, you don't want to, perfectly outline everything. Instead, you want to constantly keep the big picture in mind. Each brush stroke is made kind of in anticipation for what will come next. So I think I'm widening a little bit too much, so I'm gonna push that in a little bit. So whether it be an umber sketch, a charcoal drawing, or a graphite drawing, I'm looking for the same things. Basic shape that can be built on. And like I said, the main triangle, the mouth, just from a practical standpoint, the mouth can be moved with much more ease than the other things, for lack of better words. The eyes are much more difficult to move. Not impossible, but in general, the eyes are much more difficult to maneuver. So that's why we want to get the eyes and the eyes to the nose, and then the main triangle will relate the rest of the shapes to it, but definitely the eyes and the nose. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and put in a little shape for the mouth. Just a few simple lines for it. Just a simple little indication. And now after putting that down, relating this point to this point and this point to the eyes, nose has got to go up a little bit. Like I said, simple and easy. If I had put in so many curves and details on the nose, it would have been much more of a pain to move the nose up. I'm kind of relating where this goes down to this line here. And the idea is that each mark doesn't have to be the final mark, you know? Think of it as a building process. So as you know, I tend to kind of obliterate a mark and then go back in and, you know, constantly erasing it. It's almost like a series of superimposed sketches until we reach one that works. Like I said, of course, it doesn't erase perfectly. So that means it's now time to get into color, and we're going to use color to help draw. So the mixing white, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, titanium white. Let's get in the light first, somewhere over here. A little more titanium white. So the idea now is to use the color to help to facilitate the drawing. And now this is well, the sap green is kind of falling down, but sap green, burnt sienna, mixing white, cadmium red. So the idea now becomes to use color, like I said before, but in such a way that the brush strokes are kind of edited. I can't even speak today, but anyway, whatever. When can I speak? See this? Just little moments like that where we go in and draw. Of course, there's a long road ahead to get, you know, of course, more of a pleasing image. Like I usually say, portrait, one of the more difficult things about portrait is that you usually go through an awkward stage. You know, since we're not used to looking at unfinished faces. It's a little bit more red. And now with this little halftone, I'm going to make it a little cooler, a little more of the sap green, alizarin. A little bit of the halftone there. So now I'm going to get a smaller brush, black and white. Some flesh tone. And no medium. No extra medium. Now back to the halftone brush. Starting to sketch in these little tones. Guess I should have used a thinner brush, but oh well. It's okay. So now I'm just putting in these halftones to the side of the face. And the idea is to, you know, conceptualize the form. But also I'm using the tones to help me see where I need to adjust the outlines. The goal is to eventually, you know, facilitate the outlines. Since this is mostly a, I would say it's mostly an umber sketch with a little bit of color, which is an excellent way to progress into painting, you know, a more developed painting. A little bit more burnt sienna. Now we're going to want something a little bit more green. So sap green, raw umber. Okay, so now that we have this color, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. So yellow ochre. Now we have a value there for the bottom of the orbicularis oris. We're getting a little bit more of the roundness of the cheeks. Definitely want to emphasize this plane. Okay, so it's gonna get a little bit more yellow. So the yellow ochre, titanium white. A little bit more of the cadmium red, burnt sienna. And just like I said before earlier, I'm still trying to prioritize the main triangle. So a little more burnt sienna. Cadmium red. We're going to try to facilitate this contour. It's okay if we accidentally obliterate the eye. You can always come back in and paint it with more specificity later. So a little bit more titanium white, yellow ochre. See how each shape helps to move the outlines around. A little bit more burnt sienna, yellow ochre. Now I'm aware that I have a tendency to make my colors very warm, so I'm going to try to combat that a little bit, so that's why I put in the sap green. And if anything, think about this as coloring within the outside shape, not necessarily filling in, you know, it's not like a coloring book. So now there's a little bit more of the forehead, I think, protruding outwards. Though I think I went a little too heavy on the sap green. So a little bit more of the cadmium red, mixing white, just so we have more warmth. Okay, so now we're going to work our way down towards these planes. So a little bit more red. Titanium white. And remember, the features aren't really that important, okay? I'm pretty sure that Van Dyck didn't, you know, do a perfect pencil drawing of the face and then trace it and then just color within the lines. I'm sure he did something to the extent of drawing. He probably drew it much better than this before getting into color, but you can tell if you look closely into the photo reference that he didn't really emphasize the features or any kind of details for the features too much. And again, it's a very classical way to approach painting. more titanium white, yellow ochre. So we're going to put that light shape down here. And you have to be okay with it not looking too great in the beginning. Again, that goes down to the awkward stage again. The more of these paintings you create, the less the awkward stage is going to bother you, unless of course you're trying to film yourself, and then of course you're always aware of the awkward stage like I am, but it gets a little less uncomfortable, I will say, after a while. Too much sap green again, so I'm going to combat that with the alizarin, mixing white. And for the mouth, like I usually say, I try to look for the shapes surrounding the mouth, should I say surrounding the lips, before getting too caught up in the detail for the lips. I saw a little value there. Now I did obliterate the eye, which I said I probably would do, but that's okay. I saw a little bit of a value here that wasn't quite as evident before. Gonna switch brushes to my light brush. And back to the halftone brush. Okay, so now back to the light brush. A little bit of a indication here for the superciliary arch, but very, very subtle, meaning this little plane that's facing the light here more. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to look for a smaller brush, if I can find one. Okay, so this one that I use for the sclera, I'm going to clean it off on the side with the water. Again, I like to think of these as water cleanable oil paints rather than water mixable. You don't really want to mix it with water too much. The only water used in this was to tone the surface. So burnt sienna. How about we look for the eyebrows? Whoops. I'm going to switch back to the light brush. Okay. So one little eyebrow there. I'm gonna get the light brush, kind of obliterate that shape for a second. Now we're gonna go back in, make it more specific. Okay, all right, so now the outside contour. Of course, I'm gonna have to obliterate the other eye for the most part. Or I guess just move it down. Okay, all right, so with the raw umber, I use a little bit of the thinner, the artisan thinner. And we're going to take another stab at the contour. Now notice that see, I get my old masters confused. So you notice how Van Dyck doesn't, put the same consistency of the line everywhere. So it's a little bit heavier here to emphasize, I'm guessing, the eyebrows. So I'm going to try to kind of replicate the outline that he used. So a little less heavy here, a little bit more heavy over here. Let's just let it blend away into the forehead. So I'm just trying to put the little dot back in for the eye. It's not really working with that brush, so switching brushes here. I may or may not have to thin it out. Let's try not thinning it out first. And I guess it's working. Of course, I see now that I could put more of a shape here for the eye, or I guess a larger shape. The little indication that he put here for the eyelid. I use another dry brush. I'm gonna have to look for another brush. Where's my brush? Okay, this one. Okay, so now back to the contour. So a little more heavy over here, a little less so as we approach the mouth. Then it's heavier again down here. So I'm going to switch back to the eraser brush. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to put in a little more of an indication of the mouth, or I guess the corner of the mouth. So let's use the cadmium red, alizarin. So I'm guessing the corner of the mouth goes here. Bottom down here somewhere. A little more yellow ochre. So the corner of the mouth. Yellow ochre, cadmium red, top of the mouth. Okay, so the purpose of this, though I kind of messed it up, I'm going to have to push that over to the side, is to now relate the corner of the mouth to the outside shape of the face. So let's switch to the smaller dry brush. Push this over. Now I'm going to push it over again with the other, where's my brush? With the other dry brush. And I just have to obliterate that line for now. Okay. Alright, so now that I'm kind of alright with this shape, though not really, still want to push this in. I should be moving on to the eye again. So let's see here. There's a raw umber. alizarin, a little bit of ivory black. A little bit more alizarin, burnt sienna, now with a different brush, some more yellow ochre, titanium white, we're going to put that light shape down here as well. So I need a smaller brush, so I guess this one. A little bit of the artisan thinner. Now I'm gonna get a different brush. Where's my brush? Alright, so the one that I used for the flesh tone, I'm going to use for the background. So over here, though I don't think Rubens, why do I keep saying Rubens? Van Dyck did this because it looks like it was just the canvas itself, but I'm going to be using this to kind of mimic the tone of the canvas and push this contour, adding more specificity to it. Not an easy one. This is not that simple. And of course I'm just trying to get a better outline, a more clean, crisp outline. Okay. Alright, so now I'm gonna move this eye again Luckily, it's just a brush stroke or two. And with that background color, I'm gonna move this line a little bit too. Sorry for the glare. Alright, so now I'm still going to keep adjusting the eyes a little bit once I find the brush that I need. But before long, I'm gonna put in the rest of the elements. Maybe not. I'll put the pearls. Although someone did ask how would I paint jewelry, so I guess it kind of makes sense to paint the jewelry. But it wouldn't make sense to add the jewelry to the painting if I didn't have the, the more important things figured out, like the face. Okay. Alright, so now, with the brush I was using for the outlines, let's go ahead and look at the nose again. Nope, need a thinner brush. A little bit more artisan thinner. A little bit of red. Okay, alright, so now with the light brush and bumping into the camera, okay, so now with another small brush, let's see if I can get a kind of orangey halftone. Yeah, I take back what I said earlier. Children's portraits are just hard. There. Now we have to outline. And of course, I'm going to soften something. Alright, so before too long, I should probably start putting some information in here. A little bit more of the flesh tone. And it gets a little darker towards the neck. Okay. Now let's get the lighter color. It's like Van Dyck probably would have used a loaded brush for the texture. I switch back to the drawing brush. And of course, it's glaring, so I'm going to use the softening brush to try to eliminate the glare. It helps a little bit, not very much though. Okay, so now we'll start to add in the light. This is a beautiful vignette. The way that, remember, vignette is purposefully leaving areas unfinished to complement the areas that are more refined. So I like how he, put the vignette. All right. Gonna switch to another brush. I probably shouldn't be using my flesh tone brushes, but I'm kind of running out of brushes. So let's just use this one. So burnt umber, burnt sienna, a little bit of cadmium red. More burnt umber, burnt sienna. Burnt umber. Sorry, raw umber. I'm so used to having burnt umber on here. Alright, so with the same brush, I'm going to go in with a little bit of a cooler color. So the ivory black. We're going to put in these little halftones, the side of the, whatever this is, the headband. More titanium white. Okay, that should be enough for that. Let's go ahead and throw in this little, whatchamacallit? I guess it's a little tie. Okay, alright, so now we're going to return to the face. So what I'm going to do is get the softening brush. Soften these planes a little bit. Alright, so now I think that the features can now use a little more specificity, so let's go ahead and do that. Gonna sit back. Okay, so back to this outline. So right now my struggle is in trying to get these outlines as delicate as Van Dyck did, and that's the whole, reason I selected this one. It's because I knew that that would be a very difficult task to take on. So what I'm going to do is continue to work back and forth with these outlines. The tones that we put in previously really do help, but now it's just a light touch, very delicate touch, to try to get these shapes to work. So I usually say when in doubt, blur it out. So I'm going to be blurring the mouth a little bit and then using the ghost, what's left of it, to help to figure out a more accurate shape. Some little hairs poking out here. There's a little bit more light catching the side of the lip. So again, I decided to ghost out the mouth in order to figure out a more accurate shape. So again, I'm just looking at the shape surrounding the mouth. It's a little bit cooler. So with the light over here, I'm gonna push this in a little bit more. Again, just looking at the shapes surrounding the mouth. I don't know what to do with the mouth yet, but this is how I'm approaching it. So again, I'm pretty quiet this time just because this is very difficult to try to work with these shapes. Like I always say, I tend to get really quiet and when I'm very focused. A bit more light for the wing of the nose there. So now this contour. So usually in painting, when you're trying to problem solve, you usually start with, you know, it's kind of like the scientific method. You see something that's off that you don't like. So for me, it was the mouth. And then you ask yourself, well, what if I do this? Like, what if I move the mouth here? And you don't really know sometimes until you just do it. Make a change, and if it doesn't work, step back, evaluate what you did, and then try something else. But also keep in mind, again, that the end result is not meant to be perfect photographic rendition. And it's the same thing when we're working from life or from a photograph or something like that. It's the same kind of thing, you know. It's a balance, really. You don't want to make it too much like the photograph or too much like, yeah, you don't want to make a perfect rendition of something. You want to put a little bit of yourself in it, and usually that just happens automatically. There. I think we got the line that we've been trying to get forever. Okay. Alright, so now back to the eternal challenge, which is the mouth. I'm thinking of putting a mark for the corner, like I usually do. I'm going to relate to the side of the nose. There. I think that's alright. Now, of course, the child's mouth is slightly open, so it's going to be darker here, less red. And it's going to be lighter and more chromatic above. Then we need a darker accent beneath the lower lip, a little bit cooler. This is also kind of an exercise in not giving up. You know, as much as I struggled, and I'm still struggling with the portrait, you know, I'm showing you ways to, you know, observe a mistake or something and how to correct it, and if it doesn't go right, how to continue to move on. A little bit more red, titanium white. Now we're going to put something that I'm pretty sure Rubens. Why do I keep saying Rubens? How many times do I say Rubens? Anyway, I'm pretty sure that Van Dyck put more of a kind of a rosy red color around the cheeks, You can see it here, especially with children's portraits. You definitely want to emphasize the warmth around the cheeks, regardless of the flesh tone. You would want to push this darker and more red, but not too dark. Okay, so now we're going to put in a little bit more of a delicate intermediate value. More yellow ochre, titanium white. Alright, so now this eye is starting to bother me, so I'm going to stand back. And I think it's a combination of this curve being too high and that kind of protruding out too much. So let's fix one thing at a time. I'm going to move this over. Oh, and there. I need a little bit more light up there. Let's find another brush. Let's just use this one. There. Maybe not the right value, but we got the shape that we wanted. Now let's get the right value. It's a little bit darker. When in doubt, blur it out. So I'm going to blur, now that I have the shape that I wanted, I'm going to blur a little bit here. Then use the ghost to reassess that shape later. So now let's go into this contour. So with the drawing brush, once I can find it. There it is. So now with the drawing brush, this shape comes down. The peak of the curve should be a little lower. To about there. Okay. There. Alright, so now that I adjusted that, I noticed my battery's about to die, so I'm gonna have to swap out a battery. Alright, I just swapped out a battery. Now let's continue with this. Now you may be wondering why I'm using the water mixable, which I like to call water cleanable now, oil paints, and essentially it's just experimentation. I'm trying to figure out how to make the water cleanable oil paints work very similarly to traditional. And of course, I found that when you use less medium, I'm going to talk about this as I paint in the pearls. So anyway, when you use less medium, use less medium and try to use more paint. So the most paint you can possibly use, and no medium. You will get very similar effects. So what you want to do is avoid too much water. And now this is just if you want the water cleanable or water mixable, whatever you want to call it, to act like traditional. You can make water mixable behave differently if you want to by using more water. And I've made videos like that before. There's nothing wrong with that, I don't think. But eventually, I don't know, I think it's nice to have the paint act or feel the same as the traditional. Of course, I mainly use traditional oil paints, so that's why I'm trying to figure out how to make them work almost identically. And of course, the added benefit is that the water cleanable oil paints are significantly cheaper. And if we can get great results without spending too much money, that's always a plus. I didn't even count how many pearls are in there. Pretty much just systematic, really. Just a brush stroke for each little pearl for the dark, now a brush stroke for the light. And now I'm going to use the thinner, the artisan thinner. So I'm going to use this brush. I'm going to clean it. Well, let me turn off the autofocus. Sorry about that. Clean it with the water. Make sure that the brush, this brush, is as dry as possible. Now with the artisan thinner and the titanium white, let's mix it into this area of the palette. Now we'll just drop in those highlights. And there we have some pearls. So now I have to pick and choose my battles here. I think that what I'm going to do is put in another little half tone here. As we see it. And now with the red, yellow ochre, I'm going to try to put a little curve into this outline. always think of a curve as a series of straight lines. You can see it even in the, of course you can definitely see it in the Van Dyck painting. See the straight line over there, over there, over there, down here. So even though there are a lot of very beautiful curves, they're all built mainly on the idea of straight lines and angles. Okay, so now I'm going to use the clean and dry synthetic. Try to minimize the glare over here. And at the same time it kind of softens the edge. Well, I guess that's the most I can eliminate glare in that corner. Let's try a little more. Okay. Alright, like I said, I have to pick and choose my battles here. I think for one thing, there's a little more of a, I guess like a curve to the eyebrows. So let's go ahead and paint that in. This little curve up here. Now I'm going to stand back or sit back. Okay, so I think that there's too much distance between the two eyes after standing back. Like I said, the eyes are the thing that you least want to move, but yeah, we're gonna have to adjust that. Move that over, like I usually say, keep those shapes simple and easy. How amazing would it be that something so complicated as an eye could be moved with just a couple brush strokes? So of course, as a consequence, I have to move this corner back this way. Alright, so now a little more of the artisan thinner. Now I'm going to clean off that brush with the water. Try to make it as dry as possible. I do not want any extra water to touch the surface of the painting, just so I can preserve the feeling of traditional oil paints. So burnt umber, burnt sienna. Now I'm going to clean off another brush. And again, one of the biggest advantages of the water cleanable oil paints is that they clean so easily. So this brush I just cleaned off with the water. So with the paper towel, I'm trying to make it as dry as possible before applying paint. So just the mixing white into this area of the palette. Alright, I'm going to stand back. It's a little closer, but I do think that I have to move this shape a little more. Okay, so now back to the other brush. A little more of the thinner. And I kind of use the artisan thinner like a medium, really, just to thin out the paint a little bit when I want it to thin out, when I want it to be more thin. You know, oftentimes in painting, things just will work from the get-go, and then you just keep, you know, applying brush strokes, and you know, it's really a pleasant experience when things work out like that. Other times, like this, for me, it takes a lot of work to get the shapes to even look somewhat human, and I think that really. I think that's one of the best learning experiences is when things don't work out, because then it pushes you to problem solve, and that's just how you're going to get better, the more you learn how to problem solve. And of course that comes with experience. Okay, so I'm going to stand back. Now it could be a little too much distance from here to here, but I won't really know yet until I put a more exacting shape for the nose. Okay, so yeah, that has to be pushed back ever so slightly. And back to the drawing brush. Gonna have to thin it out a little bit. Try to eliminate some glare. Okay, so now after sitting back, I noticed that the color for the lips is too dark. I'm going to try to eliminate some glare over here. It's very risky to emphasize the bags under the eyes on a child portrait, but somehow Van Dyck pulled it off, so I'm trying to put that in ever so carefully. Subtlety is key here. Alright, I'm going to stand back again. Okay, so now we're after even more subtlety. I'm sorry if you can hear a lot of noise in the background. It's just kind of how life is right now. Okay, I'm going to stand back. I'm going to play down the bags under the eyes. So this is how you obtain subtlety. We're trying to get the values as close to one another, yet maintain their subtle differentiation. Easier said than done. A little more of the burnt sienna. Whew. I think we, never mind. Every time I say I think I got the outline, I don't even know. I get the outline and then I adjust it. So again, if you struggle with portrait painting, you're not alone. It's a very difficult, this is a very difficult task here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is get the brush that I used for the side of this, whatever you would call this thing that's on our model's head. Just gonna try to minimize this line. So notice how the linear aspect of this is quite noticeable. You know, like it's not a perfect outline from here all the way down here. You know, it's darker here, less dark here, and then darker down here. So we're going to try to put some of that subtlety. Darker over here, dark over here, less dark over here, and kind of in the middle over here. Okay, all right, so now I think I'm going to just adjust the corner of the nose again. I'm glad I noticed that the chin was too long. You know, finding mistakes is a good thing. The worst is not knowing until it's too late. Okay, so I'm going to stand back. Alright, so now we're starting to get somewhere. After however long this video is by now. Okay, I think that's helping a little bit, moving the chin up a little bit. Alright, so now we're just adjusting this little tone on the side of the neck. And of course, if you are still watching and listening, since this video it's probably a really long video, I'm going to throw in my secret saying. So in the comments section, write down hashtag never give up. Because believe me, there will be times where you want to give up on a painting. And oftentimes we do, but it's important to be patient. Be patient with it. And sometimes the answers to our questions don't oftentimes make sense. But if we don't try something new and we keep doing things the way we've been doing, then we really don't leave room to progress. It's important to experiment in order to go beyond where you've been. Yep, I had to delete some pearls, but that's okay. They were simple enough to paint. Here, I'll show you. The dark and the light, and let's see if I can do this at the back of the brush. Okay, try that again. Highlight. Okay. Alright, time to stand back again. So I'm going to have to push that article of clothing a little bit higher this way, or I guess just to the right. Alright, I think we're almost there. Gonna soften this. I'm going to blend this away and put a more specific mark. I just want to blend the background a little bit. Okay, and now we're going to put the outline back, but where it was supposed to be, or at least close to where it was supposed to be, by the nose. Alright, I'm going to stand back again. Let me just cover this first, just to get the vignette. Alright, final touches. Final touches. So the red, white, a little bit of yellow ochre, back to the red. Just take some of the paint off. A little bit of de-alizarin. Let's make it a little darker. So we did need a little bit of light for the lips. Not too much. Okay, time to stand back. So it's time to bump into the camera. Alright, so it's time to soften a little bit more. So again, like with the other episodes, this is intended for you to paint along with me. So every brush stroke and every moment of this painting has been filmed. And I guided you through it, or at least through most of it. Doesn't make sense to talk for the entire time, so that's why I was quiet for a good portion of the episode, just because this is a much more difficult. This was much more difficult for me. So if anything, hopefully, you know, this episode helps you, you know, sit back and see that, you know, even artists with over a decade of experience can struggle with things that we all struggle with: drawing, with the color, with the value, proportion, and all of that. So, you know, it's a learning process. And every time we do struggle and overcome what we were struggling with, it just makes us that much stronger. Remember, failure is nothing more than a stepping stone to success. Every time we place the nose in the wrong place or something, we are that much closer to figuring out where to place it next time, you know. The building process. That being said, always remember, in a world that can be so negative, be the spark that ignites positivity among all of us. I truly do wish you the best in all of your artwork. If you would like to support this channel, I have a Patreon account. Remember, I upload every Wednesday and Saturday. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you again on the next episode.